we're going to take, this is the crash course on recovery. Recovery research. Some key points to underscore before we shift gears into this afternoon. The problem with studying recovery and research is you got to define it. So we say, okay, let's see. Recovery is sustained abstinence from the primary drug to which you met diagnostic criteria, right? So if I met diagnostic criteria for alcohol dependence, then recovery is what? Sustained abstinence from that drug choice. But then we got into problems. Because somebody said, well, I'm in recovery, but they're smoking reefer every day and binging on cocaine Friday through Sunday night. Talking about the joys of drug-free living. And we said, oh, no, that ain't recovery. So we said, okay, you got to abstain from your primary drug, but you also got to abstain from secondary drugs, except nicotine, and then you got to smoke 4 packs a day if you're in recovery. That's part of the cultural heritage of the recovery culture. So then we went to, well, what do we do with these people who met diagnostic criteria, and we come back and follow up, and they're still using, but they ain't got any problems in their life. And it's not just their bullshit. We're interviewing family and employers, and we simply can't find any clinical data here. It looks like we have somebody who has decelerated alcohol and drug use, meaning they once met diagnostic criteria for substance use disorder, but in the past 12 months, they haven't met that criteria. Now, some of you can predict, the longer we go on, the smaller that group gets. For example, we have people who can move into that decelerated pattern in a very stable point of their life, right? They've returned to alcohol or drug use. They're not experiencing inability to abstain or loss of control. Do pretty good for the first 18 months until now they go through a divorce. You got any predictions for me? Or now they lose their job. Or now their daughter is killed in an automobile accident. Then what do we got? Incredible risk of resumption, even though if that hadn't have happened, maybe this is a person who could have prolonged that. How many of you really buy the idea that recovery is more than the absence of alcohol or drug use in an otherwise unchanged life? Recovery is more than abstinence. You know, Bill Wilson talked about emotional sobriety. They coined the concept of dry drunk people who were abstinent but might as well be drunk, you know. The problem with addiction is some people can be assholes before they become addicts. So I got an addicted asshole, if you'll pardon my clinical language here, who then gets sober. And now what have I got? And all of a sudden we're saying, nah, that ain't exactly recovery. For those of you in the criminal justice system, let me tell you how important this is. I did one of the first follow-up studies I was involved in was about 1977. And we're doing calls on everybody admitted to a facility in its first 5 years of operation. And one of the names I drew, I grimaced when I saw the name. Notorious character in treatment. In my community, notorious predator in terms of complex criminal career, hustler, phony. I mean, I had more pejorative language for this client than I almost need to go to confession and clean it up, you know. So I drew this name. And I knew what I was going to be hearing, all the jails and prisons. So I call, and guess what I hear? Oh, Billy, I got the mother on the phone. So nice to hear from you. Jamie's done so well since we came to your hospital. He's not had a drink, on and on and on. And he ain't been in any jails, and so I'm thinking, wow, I'm feeling pretty good about my treatment now, right? Because this is a tough client. But until I got to some of the social collateral, and let me tell you the conclusion. I have a man who's been alcohol or drug-free since the day he left my facility, by all the evidence I can collect. In his addiction years, he was heavily involved in the criminal justice system because alcohol and drugs so impaired him. He was like on those stupid criminal stories, you know? I mean, when he started drinking, he should just call and make an appointment with the police. He was going to jail. Well, now what I have, and I feared that one day in one of my lectures, a light bulb came on for him. And he said, my God, Bill's right. All I got to do is not drink, and I'll never go to jail again. So guess what I found 5 years later? I have an extremely competent criminal predator in my community who has maintained radical abstinence from alcohol and other drugs. Is that recovery? He's given all his probation and parole people clean urine straight through. And they're very pleased because he can charm the pants off of them. And he is incredibly competent as a criminal. So did I serve my community in helping him get sober? Is this the recovery we would aspire to? No. All of a sudden we're saying, no, recovery's more than that. So we began to talk about this idea of remission plus. Not only do we have to have remission of the alcohol and other drug problem, we have to have some movement towards global health. And then, how many of you believe that some of us in our addiction years really wounded our communities? That when it comes to taking an inventory, it goes beyond individuals and families. How do I make amends to a community that I served as a street-level dealer in for 9 years before I got in recovery? I mean, how do you make amends for all the people that I individually wounded and to what I did with the community that I wounded through that process? You know, there's very few health conditions where we say, oh, by the way, to be well from diabetes, you got to be a good citizen. Because there ain't no nexus between citizenship and diabetes, agreed? Is there a relationship between citizenship and addiction? Given the nature of the disorder, given the frequency of predatory behavior that emerges out of late-stage addiction. Yeah, I've got to clean that up. So we end up we're migrating towards